If you're tired of not liking your solos and want to learn how to make your jazz lines sound better, stick around. Like you, I've struggled in the past to make my ideas in my solos sound good all of the time, not just some of the time. As of 2019, I've been playing guitar for 45 years, gigging for 40, teaching for 29 years. It would be helpful if you know about the theory of chords. You should learn how to construct chords before we move on. If you don't know how to spell out at least 4-part chords and need help, find a teacher. Like me. Level 1. Chord tones on beats 1 and 3. One of the most important things to learn is syncing strong notes to the strong beats in the measure. If you're not aware of this, if you're in 4/4, the strong beats are on 1 and 3. If you're in 3/4, the strong beat in the measure is beat 1. For most of the examples, I'll be using a simple 1-6-2-5 chord progression. Right now, our goal is to find the nearest note from where we last left off, whether it's the same chord or a different chord. And it's really helpful if you write this out on paper so you can more clearly see what your nearest note is. Remember, it's the nearest note on paper, not the nearest note that seems within reach on your guitar. Now this is the backbone of your line. As you soon will learn, you can literally play whatever you want in between those notes on beats 1 and 3, and it will sound like you're making the chord changes. Hey there, if you think this lesson so far is helping you out with your jazz solos, comment below. Jazz rocks. Learn how to play through every song like this, and the added bonus is that you memorize the chord changes way quicker than you normally would. Level 2. Quarter note scale tones between the chord tones on beats 1 and 3. This is kind of like a bass line, except when you're soloing, you don't have to worry about the root as being the first note to play. When you get to a new chord, what you want to choose is the nearest note, remember. It could be the root, it could be the 3rd, it could be the 5th, it could be the 7th. Or, in some instances, it could be the 6th. More on that coming soon. One important thing to learn is when you're playing quarter notes, beats 2 and 4 will be your possible transition points. Transition point is when you're transitioning from one chord to the next. It can be a different note than the scale tone that you would maybe normally pick in order for it to land on a chord tone. So therefore, it could be a chromatic note. It could be a note you normally wouldn't think of playing, but it's totally fine on beats 2 and 4. And bass players think like this all the time. Level 3, eighth notes between our chord tones. Now here is where we really start to introduce the element of chromaticism. Now this is one of the reasons why I didn't create a separate level on chromatics, because you'll play more chromatic notes that are outside of the scale or the key that we're in, just by the very nature of keeping our line in sync. If you're trying to keep your strong notes lined up on strong beats, you're going to have to play an outside note so that you land on your chord tone, which is 1 and 3. But don't worry, we'll get even more into chromatics in the following levels. Oh, you. Yeah, you. Be sure to stick around to the end of the video because I have something cool I want to share with you.
Are you ready?
Now this is the point where we have to start thinking more chord scales. Many times you have certainly more than one option. We're going to omit all the different options that we could have on different chords. We're just going to streamline it down simply just so I can get my points across on these main levels. Level 4, using passing tones. Here is where we start to even hear more chromaticism. You might be asking, what is a passing tone? Well, a passing tone is a note that we introduce within a scale. We're going to talk about some rules or guidelines on how to think of passing tones or how to utilize passing tones. Now, most scales are 7 notes. We're going to insert a passing tone within the 7-note scale so that it equals 8 notes in total, playing over an even number of beats. Yes, 3/4 is even. Before we begin, here are some of our rules. If a chord has a major 7 in it, first off, what you're going to do is in your mind you're going to convert that chord to a 6 chord. So in other words, if it's a C major 7, you're going to convert that to a C6 chord. It doesn't matter if it's a major chord or a minor chord. If it has a major 7th in it, you're going to think 6 instead of 7. Now what you do is you place a passing tone between the 5th and the 6th note. Rule number 2. If a chord has a flat 7 in it, put a passing tone between the flat 7 and the root. You have a really strong sounding line that spells out a C7 chord, linear instead of. That's a very simplistic way to think of it, but that's how we're going to deal with this moving forward. Rule number 3. You can literally play any note you want to keep your line in sync, especially when transitioning to a new chord. That's usually beat 2 or beat 4 if you're thinking quarter notes, or the end of beat 2 and the end of beat 4 in 8th notes. But literally anywhere is allowed to keep your line in sync. No, not the band in sync, like in sync, like in sync. Like same time together. Level 5, play more enclosures and pickups. Pickups and enclosures fall under the same category, in my opinion. And everyone's entitled to my opinion, right? They both lead or draw you into the chord tones. Pickups can be scalar or chromatic. Think of pickups like an intro to a song, like a very small intro. I've heard jazz lore that Miles Davis said to play everything as a pickup. Now what I think he's referring to is playing into our chord tones. Enclosures create tension, and then that tension is released when you play that strong chord tone, boom, on beat 1 or 3. A really good way to practice these is on a song. You play into the chord tones on beats 1 and 3, just like we have learned so far. Oh, and just a reminder, I've created a free PDF that has all the examples covered in this part 1 lesson. Included is the whole solo I played at the beginning of the video. You can download the free PDF in the link I provided below. Don't forget to stay tuned for part 2 of the 9 levels of jazz improvising. We're going to learn the final graduating piece so that you can learn and study it. I provide the solo in both standard notation and tab for you. If you aren't a subscriber, hit that subscribe button and that bell icon so that you know when the next lesson is released. If you know someone who you think will also benefit from this video, please share it with them. See you next time in part 2. Happy practicing!